And what is your assessment of the Kit Kellogg's plan on freezing the front lines and also deploying European peacekeeping forces without American US boots on the ground in Ukraine?
Well, of course, General Kellogg's, a couple of things he said give me hope. Number one, he said publicly, Russia cannot be trusted. That's a very important starting point for any negotiation with Russia, is to acknowledge that they cannot be trusted. The second thing is he has emphasized the importance of Ukrainian sovereignty. That's important. But I think that if you start talking about in any negotiation that allows Russia to keep what it has, especially Crimea, I think is a bad deal. As long as Russia controls Crimea, they will be able to block access into Azov Sea. They will be able to threaten the Odessa, Kherson, and Mykolaiv ports, and they will always be ready to launch the next attack that will surely be coming in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. So I have a problem with us putting pressure on Ukraine to give up territory for the sake of peace, when at the same time, you acknowledge that Russia cannot be trusted. On the subject of a peacekeeping force, a good example of how to do it is the NATO IFOR, the implementation force that went into Bosnia in 1995. First of all, they had a real mandate. Second of all, they had a real agreement, the Dayton Peace Accord, to be implemented. And then NATO went in with a significant force that had air, land, and sea capabilities. They had all the things that were needed to be a credible deterrent force. It had a very clear chain of command, and it had rules of engagement that would allow soldiers to defend themselves, to use their weapons where appropriate. So any peacekeeping force has to have all these things. I mean, it has to have counter-drone capability, has to have air and missile defense capability, and it has to be trained and ready to defend itself. Otherwise, it will not be a deterrent, because for sure the Russians on day one will begin to test it, just like they did after the ceasefires of the Minsk agreement, which were obviously a total failure.
Do you believe that Russia cannot sustain this war for a long haul if Trump's administration continue to put pressure on Russia, if sanctions are not lifted, and if Ukrainian troops continue to move deep inside the Russian territory, also if Trump provides Ukraine with security guarantees and also with security assistance?
I don't know. I would be very skeptical that Russia could keep doing what they're doing today through to the end of 2025. They will find the bodies somewhere, but you can't produce tanks and artillery and replace equipment at the rate that you're losing it, or they can't. And if the U.S. were to and our European allies, by the way, Europe, the good news I'm hearing from European countries is that more and more understand the importance of helping Ukraine. And so I would anticipate that we may start seeing an increase in what some European countries are providing if there's a sense of urgency. But I think many of them also are kind of waiting to see what is the U.S. going to do. So, I mean, only President Zelensky and the Ukrainian government can decide whether or not is it better to keep going or is it better to move towards some kind of negotiated settlement. But if I'm an advisor to the president of Ukraine and I see what I see now, I'm thinking, why would you stop? Are things going to get better? Is security for Ukraine going to get better? Is the future for Ukraine going to improve if you accept a negotiated outcome with Russia in the next few months, unless there are significant security guarantees, real security guarantees of some sort, and a promise of real investment in Ukraine's reconstruction? And I don't think a lot of money is going to come to Ukraine if the big money, I'm talking about big money investors, believe that the war will start again in 2, 3, or 4 years.
Also, The Economist and the New York Times have predicted the end of the war in Ukraine this year. What is your prediction on that?
Well, first of all, I am disgusted with how much professional journalists, as well as some of the well-known analysts like Sharap and Kaufman and some others, continue to have this doom sort of analysis that there's no way Ukraine can win, that, we've got to fix this. Instead, I think that Ukraine, well, again, President Zelensky is the one that should decide whether or not Ukraine continues to fight. The war could end, of course, the war could end tomorrow if Vladimir Putin says, I can't take it anymore. There's no way I can win. We've lost too much. My economy is terrible. My people are sick of this, and we're leaving. Now, he's not going to do that, of course, but the war could end the day that Putin says, okay, it's over. He can change the narrative and start pulling out. Now, again, that's not going to happen. I think the more likely thing is that at some point, this war, honestly, it feels like the momentum has already changed from a sense of Russia's eventually going to win to, I don't think Russia can win. I think Ukraine can win. And but that's the way it is in wartime. War is a test of will, and it's a test of logistics. And both sides are pushing until the other side says, we're done.
From your perspective, how should the West react to Russia's hybrid warfare inside Europe?
Well, first of all, I don't use the phrase hybrid warfare because hybrid makes it sound like something that's not that bad, that it's below the level of war, and therefore you don't have to really do something about it, except, complain or shake your fist or whatever. I think the Russians are always at war, and they use things along a continuum from disinformation, criminal activity, sabotage, destruction of undersea cables, threatening nuclear war, kinetic force, and then nuclear war. So every day they're doing something along that spectrum. And so the West, we need to realize that the Russians are at war with us. Even if we don't think we're at war with them, they are definitely at war with us. That doesn't mean we have to respond with missiles and aircraft and rocket launchers against them. Far from it. But every time they do something that they violate airspace, they violate or they just conduct sabotage, there needs to be a price. They need to pay a price. They need to recognize that we're not going to tolerate that. That means that we have to have the right laws and policies in place so that we can quickly react, so that we can stop their ships that are illegally exporting oil and gas through the Baltic Sea. Finland has given us a good example. They went out and seized this vessel, the Eagle S, and brought it into port. And this is the kind of thing that we should be doing. There's a lot of ways that we can respond that don't have to be exactly the same. I mean, find other ways asymmetrically to respond to what Russia has done. But every time they do something, they have to feel pain. Look, they have the economy the size of Spain. There's no way they should be able to continue to fight if we got serious about helping Ukraine. We got a lot of tools that we have not even actually tried yet. That's the part that's frustrating. We haven't even tried. So you ask me, what should the West be doing? We should realize that the Russians are at war, and we need to act accordingly.
And how can you assess current Russia's position in the Middle East with the fall of Bashar al-Assad regime? What is your take on that?
Well, this is a huge opportunity for the West, for Turkey, for Ukraine, for Israel, obviously. Not only has Russia been exposed as a terrible ally, just like they were not able to help Armenia, they were not able to help save Assad, and they've now lost, it appears that they're losing their Navy base and their air base in Syria. So their ability to influence things, not only in the Middle East, but in the Mediterranean, is potentially going to be significantly reduced. And as I mentioned earlier, the departure of this submarine, the Novorossiysk, because they don't have the ability anymore to take care of these submarines in the Mediterranean. This is a significant impact on Russia's ability to project power. Now, maybe they'll eventually have something in Libya, but you can't just create a new Navy base. I mean, the maintenance, all the things necessary to have a functioning Navy base that's worth something, it will take them a long time to recreate what they had in Syria. For Israel, obviously, the fall of Syria means that Iran's ability to continue to ship weapons to Hezbollah via Syria, that's probably over or dramatically reduced. And the Israeli Air Force now has almost a clear, uninterrupted approach to Iran should Israel need to launch strikes against Iran. So a real opportunity here, and I think Turkey is probably the big winner in the region. They can expand their influence into northern Syria. I just hope that the United States and Turkey, our two NATO allies, are we think strategically and clever, and that we're clever about how to work with each other, recognizing that Turkey has legitimate interests in this area, and that how we figure out the Kurdish situation will be very important. And then finally, I thought Ukraine was very smart to immediately reach out to Syria and to use the opportunity to become the provider of grain that Russia used to be.
And my final question for you would be about Israel-Hamas negotiations. Do you expect any kind of success in this hostage exchange, hostage release negotiations between Israel and Hamas, and the possibility for a ceasefire there?
Yeah, this is a great question. I can't tell if this is really a priority for the Netanyahu government. I think there are 100, 102 hostages still out there somewhere. Some estimate that maybe a quarter to a third of them are actually already dead, but their bodies have not been returned. We don't know. It's a terrible situation for those families. But it doesn't seem that this is the priority for the Netanyahu government. I can't tell yet exactly what the Netanyahu government intends to do in Gaza. You still have fighting going on. Certainly, Israel has the upper hand here. But I don't know what all they intend to continue doing. I do believe if you ask, why is this war still going on? I mean, hasn't Israel pretty much destroyed most of Hamas' ability to launch attacks? And I think that the Netanyahu government, for now, benefits in a cynical sort of way by Israel remaining at war. Because the tradition in Israel is that whether or not people support the actual government, as long as Israel is at war, people will generally continue to support the government, understandably. So I think that what happens after the war ends, what happens to Netanyahu, is a big factor here.
Thank you, General Hodges, for your time and for your support for Ukraine, and glory to Ukraine.
Heroam Slava.
Thank you very much.